The House will come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Representative Froelich.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all Epstein victims.
Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Bacon. AML Bacon is excused. Barone. Basenecker. Bottoms. Bradfield. Bradley. Brooks. Brown. Representative Brown is excused. Caldwell. Camacho. Representative Camacho is excused. Carter. Clifford. DeGraff. Duran. English. Representative English is excused. Espinoza. Foray. Flanell. Froelich. Garcia. Representative Garcia.
Excused.
Garcia Sander. Gilchrist. Goldstein. Gonzalez. Hamrick. Hartsook. Representative Jackson is excused. Johnson. Joseph. Kelty. Leader. Representative Leader is excused. Lindsay. Representative Lindsay is excused. Luck. Representative Luck is excused. Lukens. Mabry. Representative Mabry is excused. Marshall. Martinez. Morrow. McCormick. Wynn. Pascal. Phillips. Richardson. Representative Richardson, oh yeah. Ricks. Rep Ricks is excused. Rutinel. Ryden. Sirota. Yeah, Hart and Brown must have disappeared. Representative Sirota.
Excused.
Slaw. Smith. Soper. Representative Soper.
Excused.
Stewart K. Stewart R. Story. Representative Story.
Excused.
Sukla. Taggart. Titone. Representative Titone.
Excused.
Valdez A. Rep Valdez.
Excused.
Velasco. Weinberg.
Present.
Wilford. Winter. Woodrow. Representative Woodrow.
Excused.
Woog. Zokai. And Madam Speaker.
Here. With 54 present, 11 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Froelich, before you begin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Froelich,
Yeah.
before you begin, I have a certificate for you for saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, a round of applause, members.
Thank you.
Representative Froelich.
Madam Speaker, I move that on behalf of Kit Froelich and all babies, that the Journal of March 30th be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
That is the cutest grandbaby ever. Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Members, we are moving into business. Oh, announcements. Let's do announcements first, folks. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, tomorrow is Denim Day. We will have a Denim Day resolution sponsored by myself and Representative Johnson and are in a friendly competition with the Senate to see who can raise the most money. Now, we did win last year. We outraised money for the Senate. So the goal this year is to raise $1,500. I will have a cash box on my desk. If you make a donation, any amount will do, then tomorrow you can wear denim for the day. So let's show our support for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Let's outraise the Senate and let's wear our denim.
Thank you. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to repeat, because it seems like a lot are not listening. For a charitable solution and donation, you can wear denim on a Wednesday, and it's a chance to show the Senate which house actually is best. So for those listening, denim tomorrow, donate, beat the Senate, good reasons.
Woohoo! Thank you. Representative Gilchrist.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Human Services Committee will meet upon adjournment to hear the following bills in the following order: 1336, 1328, 1314, and then 1267. We'll see you there.
Thank you. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Judiciary Committee members, in room 107 upon adjournment, we're going to hear one bill, 1309. Do not get used to the light load, because tomorrow I expect us to stay late. We're hearing many bills, but 107 upon 10 minutes upon adjournment.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee will meet upon adjournment to hear two bills, 105 and 35 Senate bills.
Thank you. Members, please keep your voices down. Representative Smith.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
I'm excused tomorrow because I am attending the first Ponderosa Pine Bark Beetle Task Force meeting.
Oh, outstanding. Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Joining us about 9:30 this morning, we're going to have some associated students of CSU here on the House floor. They'll also be in the building today. ASCSU acts as the school student government and advocates for all students on campus. They're also hosting a lunch in the West Foyer this afternoon. Invite you to stop by, talk to some amazing learners and young adults from CSU, and I'm sure that they'll teach you a few things about what they're doing on campus. So invite you to join them. Please welcome them as they join us on the House floor today.
Thank you. Did you know I was a member of ASCSU? Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker. Yay! Yay us. All right, seeing no further announcements or introductions, we will move into business. Members, please take your seats. Thank you. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to proceed out of order for consideration of resolutions.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of resolutions. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the immediate consideration of House Resolution 1004.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed immediately to House Resolution 1004. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Resolution 1004.
House Resolution 1004 by Representatives Duran and Garcia concerning celebrating Farm Workers' Day.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move for the adoption of House Resolution 1004 and ask that it be, my glasses, ask that it be resolved clause be read. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schiebel, please read the be it resolved clause.
Be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 75th General Assembly of the State of Colorado that we, the members of the House of Representatives, recognize March 31st, 2026 as Farm Workers' Day and honor the hard work, safety, and dignity of Colorado's farm workers.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I stand with great pride alongside all of you in this chamber, on both sides of the aisle, with Representative Garcia and with the survivors and community who pleaded with us to hear them. This is your day, your moment, your time. And when community calls on us to listen, real leaders do not walk away. We step forward. For me, this is more than words on paper. It is part of who I am, my roots, and my story. I came from hands cracked and bleeding beneath the hot sun, from a family who rose before the sun and worked until it disappeared behind the mountains, from people who carried more than crops. They carried dreams, dignity, and the weight of feeding a nation. That sacrifice is not history to me. It is living, it is present, and it is what brought me here today. The farm workers movement has always been a chorus, not one voice, but many. Workers who marched, who organized, who demanded dignity when the world told them to stay quiet. And today, we honor that truth. Yesterday, we acted, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Because when survivors come forward, when community is asked to be heard, we are called to do more than listen. We are called to lead. Today, as this bill is signed, we are not just changing a name. We are choosing courage. We are choosing accountability. We are choosing to center voices that are too often unheard. I want to recognize also Dolores Huerta, a woman whose courage helped shape the movement. My family marched alongside her. That legacy does not sit behind us. It lives within us. But this movement does not belong to history alone. It belongs to the farm workers of today. The men and women who wake before the sun rises, who work through heat, through exhaustion, through pain, who bend and lift and endure, so the rest of us never have to wonder where our next meal is coming from. In Colorado, agriculture generates nearly $47 billion in economic activity. It employs between 20,000 to 40,000 workers, real people, real families, and real lives. And still, too often, they are invisible. Behind every number is a mother, a father, and a child waiting at home. A story we have not taken the time to hear. And today, I want to lift up women. The mujeres in our fields and dairies, women who make up nearly a third of this workforce, women who face higher rates of violence, lower wages, fewer protections, and still they show up every day. They show up for their families, they show up for their communities, and they show up for us. As a daughter and granddaughter of farm workers and as a survivor, I see them. I see their strength and I see their sacrifice, and I carry their fight with me. Because this is what leadership looks like. It's not always easy and it's not always comfortable, but it is always rooted in doing what is right. They have carried us on their shoulders long enough. Now it is our turn to carry them. And members, I ask for a yes vote today. Thank you.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It slays to serve with you.
It slays to serve with you.
Madam Speaker, members, it is a good day today. It is a good day because today we are finally honoring the entire reason why this day even exists. Today we are honoring farm workers. We are honoring the people whose hands turned black picking potatoes and strawberries. We are honoring the people who had to sleep with thorns in their hands. We are honoring the people who did back-breaking work and still do back-breaking work every day for us. We are honoring the campesinos and the campesinas. We are honoring today the only reason any of us are alive today. Because each of us rely on the hard labor that farm workers do so that we can eat. Some of us 3 times a day, probably some of you more, just kidding, and some less. And if any of you are not eating veggies, please start eating your vegetables. It is an honor to be here with all of you. It is an honor to be standing with all of you, standing with you in the well, having our guests here to celebrate and honor the first of many Farm Workers' Days to come. Thank you. Please vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Resolution 1004. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes yes. Rep. Espinoza. Please close the machine. With 62 ayes, 0 no, and 3 excused, House Resolution 1004 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Representatives Brown, Sirota, and Taggart are excused at such time as necessary for the Joint Budget Committee meeting. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the following bills be made special orders on March 31st, 2026 at 9:23 a.m. Senate Bill 9, Senate Bill 21, Senate Bill 54, Senate Bill 26, Senate Bill 126, Senate Bill 61, and House Bill 1123.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders today, March 31st at 9:23 a.m. Representative Hamrick. Members, you have heard the motion. Representative Hamrick will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen on iLegislate and in today's folder on your box account. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader, and the Colt rule is relaxed. Mr. Schiebel, can you read the title to Senate Bill 26009?
Senate Bill 9 by Senators Lindstedt and Snyder, also Representatives McCluskey and Stewart R., concerning the determination of whether an entity is a charitable organization for purposes of state sales and use tax.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an honor to serve with you.
It's an absolute honor to serve with you.
Thank you. Members, I move Senate Bill 9 and the Finance Committee report.
To the Finance Committee report.
Members, in the Finance Committee, we, in an act of good faith, changed our safety clause to a petition clause. I would ask for your support of that move. A wholehearted yay, hooray. And thank you. Ask for your support on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is a passage of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The committee report passes. To the bill. Rep. Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 9 brings needed clarity to Colorado's tax code by creating the presumption that a nonprofit organization with current or prior federal 501c3 status qualifies for the exemption from state sales and use tax. The federal government has threatened revoking nonprofits' federal status for reasons totally unrelated to their compliance with federal tax law, reasons like their mission area and the population served. Because the federal and state codes use shared language, changes in federal nonprofit status can automatically affect a nonprofit's exemption from state taxes.
Please keep your conversations to a low volume. Thank you. Rep. Stewart.
What this means is that if a Colorado nonprofit loses its federal status, it can automatically lose its exemption from state taxes. This is a wrong and dangerous practice. Nonprofits should earn their state-exempt status based on compliance and transparency, not whether or not their mission aligns with federal priorities. We need to ensure that Colorado can push back on this trend, and I'm really proud that Senate Bill 9 accomplishes this goal in a thoughtful and measured way, and I would urge an aye vote.
Is there any further? Oh, Speaker McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I just want to say what an honor it is to be here with Representative Stewart. I want to thank our Senate co-primes, Senators Lindstedt and Snyder, and all of the nonprofit organizations that have reached out to us to share their stories and appreciation for this important legislation. This legislation ensures that if a nonprofit organization has received their letter from the IRS qualifying them as a 501c3, as a charitable organization, they can continue to claim that without any other implications should the federal government decide to take action based on their mission. For those organizations, our family resource centers, our environmental organizations, the advocacy groups that work for our immigrants or education, think of any nonprofit in your community. This bill ensures that they will continue to qualify for sales tax and use tax exemptions. We ask for an aye vote.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. So I like the disconnect of the federal from the state on this, and the state does have its own process to make these determinations. Now, it uses the 501c3 status in order to as a basis for that. So it uses the 501c3 status, and then it makes its own determination, and then it has a whole renewal process. The way I read the bill, as in the concern and the amendment that I have been discussing with the sponsors and then presented previously, is that the way the bill is worded is it makes the assumption that the revocation of the 501c3 status was political. And there's a number of reasons that the 501c3 status can be revoked. One of them would be political, and many others might have to do with an abuse of the 501c3 status. So the amendment here, which I'm going to move, I move L005 to SB009 and ask that it be properly displayed.
It is properly displayed. Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. So basically this just says, and it's put in the legalese of the bill, is that the presumption in the state when there's a revocation of a 501c3 status while it will change federally, the 501c3 status or the charitable organization status will continue until the renewal process, until it gets to the renewal process up to 1 year. So that means it gives the organization the presumption that it is legitimate and gives it an opportunity of defense. And I think both of those are important. Even if especially if it was political, but even if the revocation was due to something like improper use of the 501c3 status or fraud or anything like that, you still have to have the day in court, right? And I think this keeps Colorado in that mindset that the accused should be, in this case, that would be the 501c3 that has been revoked of its the 501c3 status rescinded. But in the determination at the Colorado level, we should operate with the presumption of innocence. And we should go from that presumption of innocence and then act on that until the renewal period up to 1 year, and that gives the charitable organization the ability to dispute, to challenge, and quite possibly remain, without just being something where the bill currently written, I think, would allow it to just continue into perpetuity without ever being actually challenged. So it should be challenged because the 501c3 status was the basis for the original charitable designation, but the organization should have be a rebuttable defense that they have, and they should enter into this with the state of Colorado with a presumption of innocence and be able to retain that if determined to be so. I ask for an aye vote.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank my colleague. We have had some fairly robust conversations about this concern that an organization have to be reviewed within an annual period of time to ensure that its status is still accurate. Additionally, in this particular amendment, I think I understand that my colleague is asking that there be another path for a charitable organization to be considered a 501c3 and sales and use tax exempt. What I would offer is that I think this, in a moment of time where we are focused on being more streamlined and efficient in our work, this creates some unnecessary administrative burdens, certainly drives a fiscal note, and I'm not sure accomplishes or is necessary for any nonprofit organization that may have committed any type of fraud or has disbanded. I would ask for a no vote on this amendment and certainly, again, appreciate my colleague's concern. There are other requirements and measures in place, both through the Secretary of State's office and through DOR, to ensure that organizations are both filing in a fair timeline and that they are reviewed. I'd ask for a no vote.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. So there is a secondary path, and it is based on the 501c3 status currently. And so Colorado does make its own determination, and the basis, the entry for it, the entry level for it, is that it has a 501c3 status. Now, when I read the bill, my read of the bill is that the charitable organization would retain that status, that charitable organization status, and it doesn't really. But if you look at the regulation, there is already a process in place for the approval. So Colorado already does approve it. 501c3 is that. Colorado can already approve a 501c3 charity, a charitable organization outside of the 501c3 status, but it is currently. But if you have a 501c3, if you have a charitable organization that is founded on a 501c3 status, it's really incumbent on the state to review that. There is an annual review process, so this just takes out the automatic review, the renewal process, because, and I'll go back and reread it, but the way I read it in committee, unless it was changed, and I don't think it has, is that the exemption status would hold, and there is. And that would actually bypass the renewal status, because it's just saying if the 501c3 is rescinded, that status will remain in place and it will still be considered a Colorado charitable organization. That does not take into effect the annual review process. So by the writing, I think unintentionally, by the writing of the bill. Because after the review process, it would be, well, the 501c3 was rescinded. They are a charitable organization, and this law would say, well, since it was rescinded, they will be considered a charitable organization. And the next year at the renewal process, the bill, you would just go back to this bill, this law, this entry into the CRS, and you would say, well, they were a 501c3, it was rescinded. Therefore, this bill, SB 26-009, requires that they maintain their charitable organization status. So without this amendment, what the bill does is bypasses the annual renewal process. Not intentionally, it just bypasses the annual renewal process, and instead of saying, hey, it's got to be renewed, you have the right to challenge it. You should have the right to challenge it. The renewal process is something that happens. If it's an annual renewal process, I'm assuming that happens every year. I'm pretty sure that's what annual means. So this just ensures that annual renewal process is not bypassed. It still stays inside the Colorado authority of making those approvals, because Colorado can approve already a charitable organization. So in that sense, if we don't need that, then this bill is unnecessary, because Colorado can already do that. What this bill does in effect is it gives the long term, just by the revocation of the charitable the 501c3 status would actually, my reading, and we'll check with the lawyers, but would actually give the charitable organization status indefinitely, and I don't think that's the way the sponsors want to go, because there are times where a 501c3 status is abused, or a charitable organization status is abused. There could be fraud involved in it. I think we do need to have the presumption of innocence. We have a system that is already in place for creation and renewal, and so this just assures that we need it. It should not drive a fiscal note.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. No. Amendment L005 fails. To the bill. Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate the protection the bill is trying to provide to our nonprofits that operate properly and nobly in this state. But as mentioned, there are those that could potentially lose their status for very valid reasons from the federal government, and recognizing the potential for fiscal notes as a concern, I move L007 to Senate Bill 9 and ask that it be properly displayed. So this is slightly different.
It is properly displayed. Rep. Richardson.
Thank you. I apologize. I thought these had been shared. So briefly, what this amendment does, I know the previous one kind of assumed innocence. This would presume that the federal government's ruling on status was appropriate, but allows the organization 90 days to come back and kind of demonstrate their work and that they should continue to have status. So I think it lessens what could be work on the department and the concern about a fiscal note, but still provides a reasonable kind of break on the process if somebody was appropriately stripped of their nonprofit status. The other, well, I'll leave it at that, and I'd urge a yes vote.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleague for this amendment. My reading of this amendment is that this does actually create an additional process, which again would probably drive a fiscal note, which is obviously a huge concern of most bills here. And I would say this also kind of undermines the intent of the bill, which is the presumption that an organization still qualifies for sales and use tax. And I just want to be very, very clear. We have been speaking about the Secretary of State's processes and the Department of Revenue's process. This bill is very narrowly tailored to just the sales and use tax exemption that exists within the Department of Revenue. So this bill does not touch the Secretary of State's charitable organization process by which one can solicit charitable donations. This particular piece of legislation is very narrow to the DOR process of I go into a store, I hand them my exemption, and I don't have to pay sales and use tax on that purchase if that purchase is for my organization. So I just want to be very clear about the narrowness of the legislation writ large, and then as it pertains to this particular amendment, this really is going to drive an additional process and really seems a bit outside of the scope of the particular piece of legislation. So we'd ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L007. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Amendment L007 fails. To the bill. Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move Amendment L009 to Senate Bill 09 and ask that it properly be displayed.
It is properly displayed. AML Winter.
Basically, what we're asking for here is what this will do is this will prompt the Department of Revenue to consider whether the organization still exists in Colorado based on revocation or is still operating as a charitable organization. With that, I ask for a yes vote.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our Assistant Minority Leader. Since a charitable organization is required to file their taxes, this revocation or suspension, I think, creates an added hurdle since it would require the Department of Revenue to have to go review and check this information. Again, an administrative burden would drive a fiscal note. I don't think it's necessary given the requirements around annual filings.
Representative Brooks.
Chair, thank you. I would push back a little bit, a lot of bit perhaps, that's the job of the DOR. that there needs to be perhaps an administrative burden in checking these things. I mean, I won't go completely off script and talk about how much we've put onto the DOR recently when it comes to their police force and everything else that we're doing with them. But asking the DOR to do their job to ensure that the policy that we're passing is adequate, I think is perfectly sensible, if not prudent. We're worried about, I mean, look, we're about ready to start playing the biggest shell game with money here next week that the state will see all year as we shuffle one thing around from one place to the next. Finding money or telling the DOR that perhaps they need to be involved in this is something I'm pretty confident we can solve. I'm pretty confident that we can solve that in the name of good policy. So for that, I believe that this amendment is on point, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Sukla?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to talk why I believe that this is an important amendment because of something personally that happened to me when I was 14 years old. When I was 14 years old, a gentleman bought 50 acres next to my father's farm. And he said he was a church. And so he had a couple of boys, and because I was always out there changing water, I got to become good friends with these boys. And that was at 14. We spent a lot of time together. Well, at 16, it was a front. It really wasn't a church, and that's why this bill is good. So at 16, my dad wakes me up in the morning. He says, "I got some bad news for you, son." He says, there was a drug deal gone bad, and that boy that is a good friend of yours was killed. There was 4 people actually killed that day because of a drug deal gone bad. So there was 4 people killed, and then if this would have been in place, they would have suspended that fake church front, and my friend might still be alive today. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? Representative Richardson.
No, I do believe this is a good amendment. We're simply asking the department to consider credible information. If the folks at the IRS have made a determination that seems counter to an authority that the state has granted to a business, it just makes common sense to me that you would consider that information. I would urge yes vote.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The DOR already does this. We'd ask for a no vote.
Representative Bottoms.
According to the language of the amendment here and according to the language of the bill, you cannot say the DOR is actually doing this. This is something that we're trying to put in because it's not given within the context. When the federal government steps in and tries to take my church's tax-exempt status away, there needs to be some kind of fallback that says this can be immediately taken care of because we are proven to be a ongoing nonprofit organization that has this C3 status to it. To say DOR is already doing this, that's not true. That is not even close to true. This is something that we have to add in so that there is the check and balance for this to happen. The DOR can do it, but they are not doing it. This is not a given, and I've seen in 35 years of being a pastor, specifically through the Obama administration, where the Obama administration was coming after churches, coming after 501c3s, Lois Lerner, all of that kind of stuff was really coming down heavy. And we have a proven record that the DOR was not stepping in when they should have stepped in. So it is irresponsible to say that the DOR is taking care of this. We have 30 years of track record to prove the DOR is not doing this. This is why we need this amendment. This will potentially directly attack nonprofits that are in the ministry arena, specifically churches.
and that's not okay. So let's stay with the facts. DR is not doing this.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L009. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. Amendment L009 fails. To the bill. Rep. Hartsook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My thanks to the sponsors when they brought this in committee. We had some really great, interesting discussions on it. And I appreciate their willingness to change it, got rid of the safety clause and put in the petition. And so I thought that was a very nice move. One of the things that I asked in committee is what is the adjudication process, and is there something that hasn't been identified that we can't resolve? And after experts that were both for and against the bill, that answer is no. They can't find something that's doing it. So then my question was, then why are we running legislation if we haven't identified something? So in that vein, I move L008 and request that it be properly displayed.
L008 is properly displayed. Representative Hartsook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the things that's, So one of the points that we were having in this discussion is if we want to make a separate determination between what the IRS does and what DOR does, then so be it. What this amendment states is if the IRS revokes a nonprofit status, then that company has to notify DOR within 30 days. Then DOR has 180 days to go through its adjudication process and notify the business yay or nay. It's a simple procedural move that says if you have been revoked by the federal level, we, the state, have 180 days to review it ourselves. If they concur, then it's revoked at the state level. If the state doesn't concur, then the state certainly still has that priority to continue it on. It is simply putting a timeline on there for the adjudication process. Again, 30 days after the business has been notified, it must notify DOR, and then 180 days after DOR has been notified, it must make its adjudication decision and notify the business what its decision is. I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Representative Brooks.
Chair, thank you. I would like to rise in support of this very sensible amendment from a colleague from Douglas County. Being able to have that review period, I think, is we're trying to get this policy into a place where we can be in support of it, trying to get it to a place to where we can look at the mechanisms of how this is going to be pursued and say, this makes sense. This is a good amendment. The review periods in this amendment make sense. I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L008? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of a Division's been called. Take a brief recess. The question before us, sorry. Still in recess. The committee will come back to order, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for your patience. I really want to emphasize that in earnest, we are trying to address the concerns that have been raised, and I hope this will be helpful. I want to be really clear that the amendments that we have been discussing have been brought, I believe, because there are concerns, there are nonprofits who may be acting fraudulently, and I want to emphasize that there are already existing processes and guidance in place to ensure that any nonprofit that is acting fraudulently or that has violated the law is caught. And some of these things include that the Department of Revenue can flag, review, deny any questionable organizations that charitable status. They can cross-check with the IRS. They can review filings or complaints. They can pause or deny if their status, if there are any of these red flags. And if there is any indication of fraud or misrepresentation, the department has the authority to open an investigation, deny or revoke charitable status, or coordinate with the IRS. I just want to emphasize that while I appreciate these last few amendments have come forward with an intent to address that, it is duplicative of the authorities that the Department of Revenue already has. I urge a no vote on Amendment L8.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think what we're saying on our side is that it's not duplicative. And just reading this, and I do understand that this is current DOR policy, that this is just basically what they outline on their website, and it sounds like they just want to codify this into law, which is interesting to me, why they're already doing this, why they then want to codify it into law. But if we look at what's added here, what is added is, as amended, okay, in determining whether it caps, from reading all caps, in determining whether an organization qualifies as a charitable organization, the Department of Revenue shall presume that an organization that presents the department with a 501c3 determination letter from the Internal Revenue Service qualifies as a charitable organization. So if they get that first one, the department shall not presume that an organization does not qualify. So if they get a letter of determination that they've lost their 501c3 status, then from the Internal Revenue Service, then the presumption is that they qualify as a charitable organization, and the department shall not presume that an organization does not qualify. Now, this is a little bit odd thing to say, because if the Colorado charitable status was premised on a 501c3, and that 501c3 is revoked, then what we have is the DOR can cross-check, can review, versus shall presume. Okay, can and shall. Can and shall. They have the ability to, they are able to review. It's not even so much the permissive. But shall is they must. They must assume that they qualify as a charitable organization. So I think we have a contradiction in our language. So what this does is SB 009 makes it possible for an organization to continue to be treated as a charitable organization even after misconduct, including fraud, unless the state affirmatively proves otherwise. So now, if you want to talk about driving a fiscal note, the fiscal note is going to have to come because the state has to currently prove that they're not. You could go with a 501c3 status is revoked, and you could rely on the 501c3 status, give them up to a year or the annual renewal process. And the annual renewal process, as we know, is not really an annual process. It's more like an annual perfunctory pass across the desk with a blessing, maybe throw some water on it or something like that. I don't know. But it's not an actual annual review. It's not an actual determination of whether they qualify. It's a presumption that they do, and this bill says they shall presume that an organization qualifies as a charitable organization. So they have to start with the premise, they have to start by this law, by this bill, they start with the presumption that they are a charitable organization. So now what are you going to do with that? Now you have to make the active proof I'm not allowed to do that. Now you have to make the active proof that it is not, because the bill says they shall presume that it is a charitable organization. So now where do you go from there? Because no matter what happens, they shall presume that it is a charitable organization. The department shall not presume that an organization does not qualify as a charitable organization because of a change in the organization's 501c3 status. So now you take this and you step back and you go, okay, what is the organization going to do? Can they even? I'm curious as to whether they can even make a determination, because they have to presume at a federal level. Now, Colorado does not have to award a charitable organization status based on a 501c3, but this bill says definitively that they shall be considered qualified as an organization. So now I'm curious from the sponsors, how are you going to handle that? How is the department going to handle that when they are required by law to consider them a charitable organization? So the law here says you must consider them a charitable organization by the fact that they had their 501c3 status revoked. Therefore, you must consider them a charitable organization. Now, what is the basis going to be for considering them not to be a charitable organization? So the law actually, I think, makes it pretty much impossible to remove a fraudulent 501c3 based on this. There's the presumption of qualification. Once an organization has had a 501c3 recognition, the Department of Revenue must start the assumption that it qualifies under state law. Once it has that, it must presume that. It shall. No negative inference from revocation. Even if the IRS revokes a status for fraud or abuse, the department cannot treat that revocation as evidence of disqualification. So how are you going to, you must presume that they're qualified. You can't look at whether they are not qualified. No mandatory re-review trigger. The bill does not require a reassessment when the federal status changes or misconduct is identified, burden shifts to the state. So if you're talking about a fiscal note process, the first process, the amendment that I gave the defendant the positive defense that they had that presumption. They just would have to go until their annual, no longer than a year, up to when they should normally be reviewed at whatever rubber stamp process that is anyways, but then make that active determination and therefore prove that they are a charitable organization. This bill actually bypasses it bypasses all that. The burden shifts to the state. The state must independently investigate and prove the organization no longer meets Colorado's definition, rather than the organization having to reprove eligibility. The bottom line is that an organization that engaged in fraud could continue receiving charitable status by default. Not only by default, but the words shall. The word shall makes it's beyond default, unless and until Colorado undertakes a separate investigation and affirmatively revokes it. And then I think that would be an uphill battle, because this law says shall. It doesn't say may. It doesn't say may presume. It says shall presume. That's a core vulnerability. The status persists passively even after a disqualifying conduct, active, proactive state action. I think maybe what we just need to do is change that shall to a presume. The Department of Revenue may presume that an organization that presents the Department of Determination letter from the Internal Revenue Service qualifies as a charitable organization. The department may presume that an organization qualifies. But that's what we tried to do in the first place. So I'd be happy to discuss a theoretical amendment. I tried to do that for the last few weeks. But right now, the bill as written enables, I think, enables a formerly charitable organization, a formerly 501(c)(3) C3 to continue under a fraudulent status. So unfortunately, I was hoping that the amendment would get me there because this is a problem. I think if something is done like that politically, it doesn't matter what side it's on, but this makes the assumption that it's political, allows the process to be politicized, and actually puts the state in a position where it defaults a fraudulent 501c3 into a continual notice of charitable organization, and that comes directly out of our tax dollars. A fraudulent, non-charitable organization is impacting the taxes of Colorado by what it buys, by all kinds of things that it does. And this bill ultimately encourages fraud.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L008? Division. Yeah. The question before us is the adoption of Amendment L008. A division has been requested. Brief recess. The committee will come back to order. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please sit and remain seated.
I'm sorry, pause.
Brief recess. The committee will come back to order. The question before us is the adoption of Amendment L008. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please sit and remain seated. Those in favor of Amendment L008, please stand and remain standing in one place, or raise your hand and keep it raised until the count is taken. You may be seated. All those opposed, please stand and remain standing in one place or raise your hand and keep it raised until the count is taken. You may be seated. Amendment L008 fails. To the bill. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L010 and ask that it be displayed.
It is properly displayed. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this conversation has been trying to thread a needle, and I'm hopeful that this might do it. Basically, I think the concern is that there is language in here related to a presumption that the department needs to presume some things in the event that a 501c3 status is changed for an organization. Now, this is a curious bill to begin with because a 501c3 status is not required in Colorado to actually have this exemption, right? You can have a charitable organization that only is recognized as tax exempt within the state of Colorado, not at the federal level. And so it's curious to me that we're even tying these things together, because the definition as it currently exists does not contemplate really the 501c3 status. And so in some ways, I'm still trying to understand why there is a fear or concern that this needs to be added. But putting that aside for a moment, the question is, for me, what does it mean that the department shall not presume something? And does that translate to the guy in the department a suggestion that he shouldn't look any further into an organization when he finds out that their 501c3 status has been revoked? And I don't think that that is what is desired, as the speakers the bill sponsor has noted on the record. The desire is not to change any of those investigatory processes or procedures that ensure a closer look. The desire is just simply to say, hey, if they lose their status here, it shouldn't affect automatically their status in Colorado. And so if that is indeed the case, then hopefully this particular amendment satisfies that, because it says nothing in this subsection 2.5 prevents the Department of Revenue from reviewing whether an organization qualifies as a charitable organization for purposes of this subsection 2.5. In other words, Department, please do not read the language related to what you should or should not presume as limiting your ability to look into the charitable organization in the other ways that you are required and expected to do, that there is no hindrance there of seeking to look closer. In other words, the presumption is not that you have to just receive that revocation and put it in a file and look no further. The presumption is simply that it doesn't automatically result in your loss of charitable organization status at the state level, and that there still may be an opportunity to look further into the status in light of all of the other requirements. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L010? Rebecca Stewart, Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We deeply appreciate our colleagues and the attempt to resolve some of the concerns that have been brought up during this particular debate. Again, to be very clear, speaking to the amendment, this piece of legislation really does target a very specific exemption that nonprofits have. There are several benefits of being a nonprofit organization. One can be accepting charitable donations that have some sort of benefit for donors, and another is being able to be exempt from sales and use tax. For example, if you are purchasing items online or in a store here in Colorado, being able to present that proof of sales and use tax exemption is a benefit that saves some organizations thousands, if not potentially tens of thousands of dollars every single year, which allows them to put those dollars back into their mission. The intent of this bill is to ensure that there is not a presumption of fraud or wrongdoing if a federal status is revoked due to potentially mission-oriented or political reasons, and that here in Colorado we retain the authority through the Department of Revenue and other processes to ensure that we are supporting our nonprofits should they be the target of something that is political or nefarious. And so really, really appreciative of the discussion today, particularly on this amendment. And we are actually going to be asking for an aye vote on this particular amendment.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L10? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L10. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. L10 passes. To the bill. Madam Speaker. Okay. The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill, 26009 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 26009 is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 2621.
Senate Bill 21 by Senators Mulligan and Simpson, also Representatives Barone and Pascal, concerning authorizing the Clean Fleet Enterprise to encourage the replacement of high-emitting trucks with low-emitting trucks in motor vehicle fleets.
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move SB 26021.
So moved. Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this bill here that we're bringing, what this bill actually does is this is an option. It's not a mandate. For my Republican colleagues, it's not a mandate. It's an option for trucking companies or truck drivers, independent truck drivers, to turn in their 2009 and older semi-truck vehicles to get decommissioned and get some financial help for a newer, cleaner, more efficient diesel or electric vehicle. Now, this program was started a couple years ago, specifically just for electric vehicles, but the program was not working because the demand wasn't there and the product wasn't there. There wasn't very many electric semi-truck vehicles available for purchase or for use. So we expanded this program to include clean diesel vehicles, cleaner emissions, cleaner diesel vehicles, and it also includes natural gas vehicles. Now, this is, like I said, is an option. We can turn those in to get decommissioned and get some financial help for newer vehicles. What the intent of this bill is to get those older vehicles off the road and get cleaner vehicles on the road. This authorizes a current enterprise. It's an enterprise that already exists. It's not creating a new enterprise. It creates grants, rebates, or loans, or other financial tools to acquire cleaner vehicles. Now, this bill also entails that 2006 and older vehicle are prioritized, but it includes also 2009 and older vehicles. So I believe this is a good bill for a good option bill for independent truck drivers or trucking companies to be able to use newer vehicles and get those older ones off the road. And I urge an aye vote.
Rep. Pascal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So why would we do this? As Rep. Barone mentioned, the Clean Fleet Enterprise for vehicles over 26,000 pounds has been pretty underutilized. And the main reason is because the tech is still in the early adapter phase. So for electric, it's about 3%, and for compressed natural gas and hydrogen, they're both less than 1%. So we are wanting to continue the mission of this enterprise to get emissions out of the air, to get cleaner air. So for the next 5 years, so this is only for 5 years, it's capped at 20% of the fund can be used for swapping out an older diesel vehicle with the emphasis on 2006 and older, and replace it with 2019 and over?
Yep.
Okay.
2019.
2019, okay. I request an aye vote because I think this is good progress, continuing mission of getting emissions out of the air here in Colorado. Do you want to move the?
No, you go.
Okay. I move Amendment L008 and ask that it be lovingly displayed. You're a mom.
It is properly displayed. Rep. Paschal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this amendment does, it reiterates the goal that the mission of the Clean Fleet enterprise is to achieve measurable results and outcomes in terms of getting emission out of the air. And it also has a section in it that requires this new program, statistics from this new program, to be presented in the report that happens at the end of the year and is presented at the SMART Act hearings. And we urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L008? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L008. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. L008 is passed. To the bill. Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I urge an aye vote.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, these bills always. Well, this is second reading. This is a time for debating policy and seeing and making sure we do it in the public eye for the people that are in the gallery and the people that are figuratively in the gallery online. And a couple things about these programs when we talk about climate and what this is supposed to achieve. The state is in a $750 million deficit, at least. We have all kinds of shortfalls. We're $1.5 billion behind. We have $3 billion worth or $4 billion worth of certificates of deposit or certificates of participation trophies, as I refer to them, and we just don't have the money. So I don't know why this money in particular is not rolled into something productive. Now, most of these vehicles are not out of sync because of early adopter. They're out of sync because they've been rejected by the market. The battery, for instance, if you follow the battery buses, I mean, besides the likelihood or the possibility that they become completely engulfed in flame in a matter of seconds, and that puts a damping effect on battery buses, especially when they do that and they decommission multiple diesel battery buses for, say, $600,000 a piece, and then they buy an electric bus for around $1 million a piece, and then they have to buy the equivalent of that $1 million bus with a $1 million charging station, and then that $1 million bus can only be on the road for about 4 hours. So for every diesel bus, you need four electric buses so that they can cycle through. And this is why you're not going to have adoption of these fleets. Now, it is good that we're going out and recognizing that diesel can be clean, but some of these, looking at the dashboard, some of these, like a shipping company that makes $7 billion or nearly $8 billion per year is given subsidies of over $1 million in fleet. Why are we, as a state who's $750 million in the hole to start, giving any money to an organization that is a commercial enterprise that is making $7.9 billion? Why are we doing that with our money? This money should be rolled back into the general fund. And if we look at the overall premise of what we're going to do, we're going to try to get 2006 vehicles off. We always forget that these new vehicles have an emissions cost in and of themselves. And that emissions cost, and then you have to take that emissions cost. Now, I'm obviously coming at this from the standpoint that CO2 is not a problem because CO2 makes plants grow. If we didn't have the Industrial Revolution, there are some scientists that that are pretty confident that we would have plunged below livable levels and everything would be dead at this point. Now, for some people, they think that's a great thing, but I'm just going to say that the way to save humanity is not to kill the planet. The So the idea here is that we're going to replace a 2006 previous vehicle with a newer vehicle, but that newer vehicle comes with all kinds of, it comes with a new engine, especially if it comes with batteries. That battery comes with the implication of slave labor, of third world slave labor. That comes with the horrible economic consequences of that, the ecological consequences of that, the emissions consequences of that, because all of that material is new. And you're likely, I'll just say likely, never going to offset the displacements of a new vehicle for one that could stay in service for a number of years. The delta difference in miles per gallon, miles per gallon is going to be marginal, and you're going to have a huge cost, and you're going to have to put a lot of miles on that new vehicle before you ever offset the emissions, if the emissions are something you actually care about. Now, I would argue that you don't need to care about them, because CO2 just makes plants grow and it makes them more drought resistant. So worrying about CO2, and of course 33 degrees times 0.1 over 3,300 billion tons is 0.001 degrees. So we're doing this all for the governor's supposedly cost-effective climate goal of 0.001 degrees. And that's if we went to 100% net zero, which of course we're not going to do. This is going to be very marginal. One thing that is key to all of these things is that the Colorado Energy Office has not produced a single climate goal. The Colorado Energy Office is unable to produce a single climate goal. When we talked about battery buses a few years ago under the boson bill, when I asked the Colorado Energy Office and CDPHE what their metrics were for the reduction of ozone, CDPHE or whoever, the Colorado Energy Office, CEO, said not only do we not have metrics, we don't know how to make those metrics. We don't know how to achieve, we don't even know how to develop the metrics which form the basis of spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, those hundreds of millions of dollars then have to be divided by 0.001 degrees, or actually a lot less. And so, or you just take that and you multiply those hundreds of millions of dollars and you multiply it by 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 to get the true cost of what you're trying to accomplish. So basically, effectively, you're dividing a very high number by zero and you get an effectively infinite number. We are accomplishing nothing. Now, I think it's a good thing that this bill is expanding into diesel, but we're not, the industry is not rejecting electric vehicles. The industry is rejecting electric vehicles because they never made sense. If you go back 20 years and why companies were not making electric vehicles is because there was no business case to be made for electric vehicles. The only reason they did electric vehicles was for the emotive value. Nothing to do with performance, nothing to do with the climate. They only were forced into that market for emotional reasons. And that lasted for a while because, say, $50,000 per vehicle is offset from each vehicle into something like internal combustion engine vehicles. And so everybody who got an internal combustion engine vehicle, because the battery-operated ones don't make sense, gets to pay for somebody else's expensive electric toy. Now, who actually buys internal combustion engine? Well, people that need to actually travel. And they are, you should know that, everybody should know that they're paying $17 per gallon for your neighbor to have an electric vehicle. That's the study. You take all of the subsidies of this stuff, and now the state is doing it even more. Now, at least we're doing it with diesel, but if you look at the premise of the program that we're going to reduce emissions, we're not going to reduce emissions. We're going to put them someplace else. So if we're going to spend money and not accomplish the goal, then what are we accomplishing? I move L001 to SB 21 and ask that it be displayed. 011. SB 01, L011 to SB 021 and ask that it be displayed.
L11 has been properly displayed. Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Chair. The enterprise shall post on its public website. So there is a 5-year, just want to make clear, there is a 5-year sunset on this bill. Good. But this is something different. The enterprise shall post on its public website any public data portal maintained by because this is data that should be updated regularly. So you're just asking the agency that's updating this regularly, that maintains a website, to put this data online so everybody can see what they're spending money on. For the enterprise for the climate, air quality, and emissions reductions goals, the enterprise is using to implement Section 9 Bravo 8, including the metrics, baseline assumptions, and methodology used to measure the progress to these goals. The enterprise shall update these postings at least annually. Now, this is data, this is information that these organizations should already have. Because if you are going to have a legitimate climate goal, not a carbon goal, but a climate goal, because the regulation in 2019 requires that there be a climate goal, and it requires that that climate goal be cost effective. Well, you can't know if a climate goal is cost effective if you don't have a climate goal. Notably, the director of the Colorado Energy Office has absolutely no clue what a climate goal is. The governor has absolutely no clue what a climate goal is. But that doesn't mean they're not willing to rape their way across Colorado with eminent domain and destroy people's property. It just means that they don't have a basis for it. Not a single one. Instead, they conflate it with a carbon goal and say that a carbon goal is in fact a climate goal, which it is clearly not. But they cannot state what their carbon goal will do in terms of climate, meaning it's a carbon goal completely unrelated to the requirements of the law. So this bill, by in essence trying to accomplish any climate goal, is actually, I would argue, is against the law. So I recognize that there is a 5-year. This has nothing to do with the 5-year sunset. This has to do with, if we are going to measure something, it has to have metrics. If we're going to have metrics, they have to have baseline assumptions, and we have to have a methodology for determining it, so that people with actually scientific knowledge, unlike the Colorado Energy Office, can look at these goals and they can analyze them and they can see where we are. So again, I ask for an aye vote on this because we have to have metrics, we have to have baseline assumptions, and we have to have methodology. That's something they should be able to add to the website immediately. It should be something that they have on there already. So this should be something that's in place already. This would just codify it. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Representative DeGraff for bringing this up. I want to speak a little bit on this amendment here, but at the same time, some of the arguments that were said that brought this amendment forward was that some of these trucks were going to be continuing on the road. So this bill, what it does is decommissions those old vehicles, so they will not be on the road anymore. It's just an expansion of the program. From electric, so it's not all just electric. I understand that the demand is not there for electric. That's why thus the purpose of this bill is to expand it to cleaner diesels. The money's already there. Enterprise is already there. We're just trying to make the most of that enterprise at the moment, even though I agree with 90% of what you're saying, but at the same time, we got to make what's best for the money that's being already there. If we're already paying into it, why let it go to waste on something else? We might as well try to do something, and like I said, it's an option. People do not need to use this program if they don't want to. If they don't want to, great. I know for a fact there's plenty of truck drivers that would not decommission their older vehicles. But this program is just, it's an option to be able to use that to take some of these older vehicles off the road and to continue working the way that they want to work. Now, this amendment here for a yearly to put their findings on a yearly basis might unintentionally create a fiscal note. That's one thing that I am very concerned about, especially given what we're already going through. So we just, and then that five-year sunset, after 5 years, I will probably still be here. If not, great, but it's still 5 years. We can look at the program again, and we can bring it up. If it's working, great, we'll continue it. If it isn't, I can let it go. Let it go 100%. Now, I had another point.
We already produced a report.
Oh, yeah. There's already a report produced, and then we can also ask about this program in the SMART Act hearings yearly. So when the department comes up, we can also ask about it, and they would have to tell us, or like we already know, sometimes they say, we'll get back to you on it. But at the same time, we can get that information without creating a fiscal note. I urge a no vote.
Rep. DeGraff?
I do appreciate the clarification and and going back to that vehicle issue. I am assuming that those pre-2006 vehicles are decommissioned. So let's say you take a diesel truck off the road that's pre-2006 and you replace it with a 2025 model. Whatever the difference in emissions between those two vehicles are, the one has been decommissioned and the other starts up. And you say, let's say you have a difference in miles per gallon of 10 miles per gallon. Let's just give it something really crazy, like a difference of 10 miles per gallon. You're going to have to drive a whole lot of miles before you offset the emissions that were created in the new vehicle. Now, I'm personally not opposed to the new emissions because carbon dioxide, again, just makes the grass grow and it makes plants more drought resilient. So that's not a problem. The problem here I have is the money, because we are going to look at all kinds of stuff and we're going to take that money and we're going to re-roll that money into other programs. And I'm just saying, if we're going to accomplish nothing with this program, and we are literally accomplishing nothing with this program, I would like to see that money rolled into something that, some other fraud, waste, and abuse program that we're going to fund. So I'm opposed to that. Now, I do appreciate that you're saying that these metrics, baseline assumption and methodology, are supposedly covered in the SMART hearing, but I guarantee you they're not. They don't have metrics, they don't have baseline assumptions, and they don't have methodology. 100% guarantee that they don't. And that will come out at the SMART hearing. But since you're saying that they do, then all we're asking here is that they take their IT department that they already have, because some of this stuff is already posted on there, and they post the methodology, baseline assumptions, and metrics on the website. Now, those are not going to change, metrics, baselines, and methodology, and they're going to update and measure the progress. And they already do this in a sense. So all we're really adding is adding the metrics, baselines, assumptions, and methodology, and saying that as you have the data, that it's updated. Most of that is done automatically. So this is just saying, really, this bottom line comes down to adding the metrics, baseline assumption, and methodology so that we can track the actual progress. Because if it's important, you measure it. And that's what a metric is for. So again, I thank you for the clarification on that, but I think it is important because if we're going to spend money on it, we need to know where we're going. Right now, when we don't have metrics, baseline assumptions, and methodology, all we know is that we're making good time, but we don't know where we're going. Or we're getting nowhere fast. So I ask for an aye vote for science and for the children.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L11? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L11. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. L11 fails. To the bill. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's important to provide the Chamber with some background and history and some current information about the program that we're talking about. In my first year in office, towards the end of the year, this building passed Senate Bill 21-260. It was an interesting bill because it created a variety of different enterprises to address some transportation issues. But because of Proposition 117, it had to create multiple enterprises instead of just one. If it created just one enterprise, it would have to go to the voters for approval because it was looking to bring in to the state more than $100 million over 5 years. So the bill created these multiple enterprises, and within that particular bill, the Clean Fleet Enterprise was born. Now, Senate Bill 21260 is one of the more expensive pieces of legislation in Colorado history. In fact, it forces taxpayers to hand over $5.4 billion to fund these enterprises. The Clean Fleet Enterprise has allocated millions of dollars to purchase clean vehicles by cities, municipalities, and public companies. To give you a taste of what's been happening, the Bristlecone Group, which is an Aurora-based specialized delivery company, has received $636,000 in taxpayer funds to purchase 4 new trucks. UPS got $1.5 million to purchase 10 trucks. No, 10 electric delivery vans, excuse me. Xcel Energy received $2.775 million to buy 15 bucket trucks. Cisco, the global leader in selling, marketing, and distributing food products to restaurants, hotels, and others, is earmarked to receive over $5 million for regional delivery trucks. But these aren't just any trucks. They are electric-powered trucks, which, as we've heard, this doesn't just allow for those. But what's interesting is the price of these trucks cost about $160,000 each. The price of ones using combustion engines, about $94,000. My question is, why are we subsidizing private entities with taxpayer dollars? When people are struggling to put food on the table, why are we demanding they pay more to government so that we can help UPS buy more vehicles? Did you know that in the final quarter of last year alone, UPS reported a profit of $2.6 billion? They brought in $7.9 billion for the whole year. Why should our people be subsidizing them? In fact, UPS's profits, just by way of grasping this, would be enough to fund our state's entire portion of both Medicaid and higher education. And yet, we're giving or have given them almost $1.6 million to purchase 10 vans. Is this really where we are going to prioritize? We are going to expand a program and enable even more private companies to engage in this? All of this information is on CDPHE's dashboard. Is this really how we are going to prioritize? Nothing says we have to maintain these enterprises, much less expand them. Perhaps we can give this money back to the people and stop subsidizing companies that are well able to afford their own vehicles. I ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 2621? Representative DeGraff.
Okay, just for math. I know everybody loves math. Just looked up. Pre-2006 UPS delivery vehicle, primarily conventional diesel package cars, step vans used for urban frequent stops, typically achieve a real-world fuel economy in the range of 6 to 10 miles per gallon. With many reports, the driver accounts averaging around 7 to 8. Comparable conventional diesel vans from the late 2000s, and then for 2026, hybrid diesel, 8 to 12 miles per gallon. So the miles per gallon has effectively not change. Or let's just give it 1 mile per gallon. If we take $94,000, because that represents material and manpower, divided by $4 per gallon, and multiply it by 1 gallon, or by 1 mile per gallon difference, we get $2,350,000 miles. So at that point, at passing 2,350,000 miles, then the new 2026 diesel van will start reducing emissions. Until then, it will not. Now, the circumference of the Earth is roughly 25,000 miles, so we're talking about 100 trips. Not going to do that math in public. All right. So what we're doing, unfortunately, we should be rolling this money into something that actually accomplishes something, not a subsidy for organizations that don't need it. So I move L010 to SB 20021 and ask that it be displayed. Now, just some further background. A lot of this stuff is around environmental justice.
Reptograph is, wait for it to be properly displayed.
I'm
All
just
right.
talking in general.
All right, L10 is properly displayed, Reptograph.
Okay. So L10, the purpose of L10, stays within the bill title because it governs how the enterprise fee money is used for truck replacement program, and it forces the bill itself to show that the unused fee revenue should be returned through lower charges rather than stockpiled to subsidize private fleet purchases. So amend the re-engrossed bill if at the end of any fiscal state year the enterprise has not obligated at least 80% of the money budgeted for purposes of this subsection, the board shall reduce any fee or surcharge imposed pursuant to subsections 7 and 8 of this section for the following fiscal year in the amount sufficient to offset any unobligated balance attributable to this section. If the board cannot reasonably implement this rate of reduction before the next fiscal year, the board shall suspend collection of the portion of the fee until the surcharge attributable to this subsection until the unobligated balance has been fully offset. Now, I do recognize that this is contrary to the nature of the Colorado General Assembly, that it would reduce a fee, but we can, in fact, reduce a fee, and we can do so structurally. We're saying that we have too much money in this fund. The purpose of this bill is to spend it, and the other option would be to not collect it. It is okay for the General Assembly to leave money in the pockets of citizens. I recognize that that concept is anathema, but it's probably something that we should learn to embrace. So again, because the enterprise is overfunded, because it is just looking for some place to spend money, my suggestion is that we take that money, put it into the leave it in the pockets of citizens of Colorado, let them offset their wages, let them offset the high cost of living that we're creating in here, and actually just leave some money in their pockets instead of always lamenting about the high cost of living and the fact that in order to offset the high cost of living, the General Assembly needs to raise their taxes, raise debt, and raise fees on them to somehow make their lives better, which strangely the citizens of Colorado reject wholeheartedly. I ask for an aye vote on this. We don't need to be subsidizing. Or these large organizations. We need to be leaving money in the pockets of the citizens of Colorado.
Is there any further discussion to L10? Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I come up here to say the money's already there. Money's already been allocated for this program. I urge a no vote.
Is there any further discussion to L00 on Reptograph? L10.
L010, yes. L10, if they want to say it that way. Yes, the money is already there. We have the money. What we should be doing is rolling this into some sort of priority, and we should be prioritizing where we're spending this money instead of just saying we have the money, let's spend it. That is not fiscally responsible. What this amendment is saying is that going forward, if we have this case where this allocation, because the market is clearly saying that yeah, we don't want your help on electric vehicles. Now we're expanding it into diesel, and we're giving diesel vehicles to organizations, to companies that clearly don't need it. And we're doing so out of the pockets of the citizens of Colorado. So if this bill is not accomplishing what it was intended to, and of course, industry is rejecting the battery-operated vehicles because they do not deliver, they literally do not deliver on their promises, then we cut the fee back and we leave the fee and we deplete the fee. And we don't just spend it because we have it. We spend it on something that we need. We actually spend it and we choose a priority. Right now, our priority is right now we have in the deficit spending that we're in, we have prioritized that we are going to give more money to large corporate entities that make $8 billion per year. And we are going to subsidize companies that make $8 billion per year. So I'm going to guess that the citizens of Colorado might object to subsidizing a company for that makes $8 billion per year. I mean, the amount that they're, the 1 point, whatever they're getting, it's 1.5 million. It's barely in the decimal of what they're doing, yet they're taking that money and it comes out of the pockets of the citizens of Colorado. This just says, when we have more money than we need, we don't divert it into another program. We say, hey, that program, we are going to let it just naturally deplete, and let's spend that money on a priority, not just spend it to spend it.
Thank you, Representative DeGraff. Is there any further discussion on L10? Representative Pascal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would submit that this is not what this bill is about. And for anyone in this room that has legislative ability to run bills, they could run that bill. But this is not this bill. I urge a no vote.
Is there any further discussion to L10? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L10 to Senate Bill 21. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. The amendment is lost. To the bill. Is there any further conversation? Is there any further discussion to Senate Bill 21? Seeing none, the question, Representative DeGraff, thank you.
Okay. I move L009 to SB 21 and ask that it be displayed.
L009 has been displayed. To the amendment, Rep. DeGraff.
Okay. Try this again. Over $1 million given to a nearly $8 billion company. Over $1 million coming from the pockets of the citizens of Colorado to an $8 billion company for some undefined purpose of environmental justice, which is never defined, but often used for its emotive value. Because that's how you get the lemmings to jump over the cliff. This bill, this amendment, the purpose of this amendment the current enterprise financing, keep the enterprise financing structure while showing that the fee-backed public money should not be given away to large fleets that can finance their own purchases. So we just want this. Let's rein it back. If we're going to help anybody, let's help the small business community. Let's help the companies that actually need the breathing room that this would provide. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Graff. This is, with consulting with my co-prime and looking at this amendment, this is not a bad amendment at all. I do agree with this. I do urge an aye vote, help the small businesses. These larger companies can't afford this, even if it's just a loan. they can still afford it. So I do urge an aye vote on this amendment. I believe this is a good amendment to this bill, and that would actually help the smaller businesses, smaller trucking companies, independent trucking companies be able to take advantage of this program. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion to L009? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L009 to Senate Bill 21. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. To the bill. Is there any further discussion to House Senate Bill 21? Seeing, it's a little loud in here, please. Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Senate Bill 21 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 21 as amended is passed. Mr. Shebo, please read the title to Senate Bill 50. Please read the title to Senate Bill 54.
Senate Bill 54 by Senators Catlin and Snyder, also Representatives Ricks and Richardson, concerning an exception to the statutory limit on the amount that a landlord may require a tenant to provide as a security deposit in cases where the landlord and tenant have executed a post-closing occupancy agreement.
To the bill, Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move SB 26054 and the committee report.
There's no committee report, so you are to the bill.
Just to the bill? Okay. All right.
Senate Bill 54 has been moved. Representative Ricks to the bill.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members. This bill is a very simple bill. In real estate transactions, when a seller and a buyer agrees that the seller will remain in the house for a short defined period after closing, this is a common and very practical tool that helps to ensure smooth transitions for both parties. And basically what we're talking about is post-occupancy closing agreements. And basically, if the seller needs a little bit more time to move out of the house, the buyer allows them for a period typically no longer than 60 days. And so this allows for this agreement to happen. And there's usually some type of a security deposit that is already baked into the transaction. This bill makes a small exception in the law so that the post-occupancy agreement can happen and we don't have to be capped to existing security deposit caps that already exist for transactions. And so SB 2654 creates a targeted exception to the existing security deposit cap for situations where the buyers and the sellers have executed a post-closing occupancy agreement in connection with a property sale. It does not alter security deposit rules for traditional rental agreements in any way, and the bill eliminates the need for complicated purchase price workarounds, allowing the true sale value to be recorded accurately, giving both the seller and the buyer straightforward protection during that transition period. And so we're asking for your yes vote on this bill. It passed out of the Senate unanimously, and also out of our committee, the Housing Committee, unanimously as well.
Representative Richardson.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do thank my co-prime as she's accurately described the bill. It's relatively simple. It just ensures that in a real estate transaction where the seller remains in the home for a few weeks up to perhaps a few months max, they aren't pulled into the landlord-tenant rules that were established for security deposits back in with SB 23184. It just caused some confusion. It causes some real weird workarounds in real estate contracts that sometimes result in a recording of the purchase price being slightly higher than it actually would have been because the rental portion of that agreement is tacked on to the purchase price of the house, so that distorts things for appraisers and assessors that are looking at market values. So it's a good bill. It's an easy fix. Recommend a yes vote.
Vote yes.
Thank you, Representative Richardson and Ricks. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 54? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 54. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 54 passes. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 26.
Senate Bill 26 by Senators Catlin and Mullica, also Representatives Leader and Winter, concerning increasing the gross vehicle weight rating limit for a passenger motor vehicle for which the use of a child restraint system is required.
Representative Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's a pleasure to serve with you.
It is truly a pleasure to serve with you.
I'm here to, I move Senate Bill 26026.
26.
Yes, 026.
To the Senate Bill 026.
Thank you.
Representative Leader.
It's concerning increasing the gross vehicle weight rating limit for a passenger motor vehicle for which the use of a child restraint system is required. So this bill is an important adjustment to the definition of motor vehicles that currently use CRS 424-236, child restraint systems required. So in the current definition, it states that motor vehicle means a passenger car, a pickup truck or a van, minivan, or sport utility vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating, it's GVWR, or less than 10,000 pounds, meaning that a motor vehicle that has a GVWR of more than 10,000 pounds is exempt from child restraint regulations outlined in CRS 424-236. So the current framework in CRS 424-236, it's outdated. So the metric used in the statute of GVWR of 10,000 pounds was selected because of its use in federal interstate commerce regulations, and the intent was to exempt various categories of vehicles from child restraint systems, as well as other large vehicles, I should say, such as schools and commercial buses. The law was conceived when a 10,001-pound vehicle was almost certainly a commercial truck. And with that, I pass this to AML.
AML Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for those from our part of the state, it basically means one-ton trucks and farm equipment and everything that you use on the farm and ranch are still exempt within this bill. The State Patrol came to us with this idea. They had passed some legislation a few years ago, and this slipped through the cracks, and they just wanted to make sure that they shored it up, that we could protect our most valuable asset, and that's our kids.
Good bill, vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 26? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 26. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 26 passes. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 126.
Senate Bill 126 by Senators Marchman and Rich, also Representative Johnson, concerning teacher licensure for out-of-state applicants.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 126 and the Education Committee report.
To the Education Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Education Committee, we brought an amendment that removes a requirement for the Colorado Department of Education to enter into a reciprocal agreement with each individual state in the compact, and we ask for your yes vote.
Is there any further discussion to the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The committee report, the Education Committee report is adopted. Representative Johnson to Senate Bill 126.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 126 attempts to remove barriers to achieving teacher licensure for out-of-state teachers, ensuring that our schools have the workforce they need to educate our students. For the 2024-2025 school year, Colorado had 7,792 open teaching positions. We hear about it all the time, teaching shortages. This bill helps by just removing the within 7-year requirement. We are keeping the 3-year qualification all the other qualifications that our in-state teachers need. This is just making sure that when life happens, teachers who might have gone to the military, had family members with illnesses, decided on another career route, but then came back to education maybe 10 or 12 years later, this ensures that we are allowing them to be able to come to Colorado and help fill some of those gaps so our students can get the best and make sure our classrooms are filled.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is a continuation of a bill that I passed in 2023. This bill addresses our critical shortage of teachers in the state of Colorado, and it does so in two ways. It deletes the 7-year requirement but retains the 3-year experience threshold, and it directs the State Board of Education to enter into an interstate reciprocal agreement that states participating in the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact to create an expedited licensure pathway. We ask for your yes vote on Senate Bill
126. Is there any further discussion to Senate Bill 126? Representative Garcia Sender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to rise in support of this bill. As a former principal, still district administrator, I find this very important. We have a dearth of teaching applicants in our state. Our state teaching university isn't turning out enough people who want to go into the profession. And so we do still have a lot of people that do want to move to Colorado. And if they've got teaching licenses, this is a great way to snag some of them in and make it a little bit easier, lower the paperwork burdens, time length that they need to transition into our state as a teacher. So I really fully support this bill and urge everybody to vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 126? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Senate Bill 126 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 126 as amended is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 26061.
Senate Bill 61 by Senators Rich and Roberts, also Representatives Lukens and Richardson, concerning a change to legal notice publication requirements for a county without a requisite legal newspaper.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 61.
To the bill. Representative Richardson.
So extra, read all about it. Truly, read about it. It's in your drawer. Under current law, sometimes we're literally required to send legal notices to papers outside of home counties. Sometimes we're literally sending notices to papers in adjoining states, just because statute hasn't kept up with reality. Senate Bill 61 is one of those bills that actually won't make headlines, but it fixes how headlines might be used. Okay, thank you. So right now, if a county doesn't have a perfectly legal by definition paper, we can push notices out to neighboring counties even when there's a perfectly suitable paper within the county. The bill simply says, let's use common sense. If there's a paper, use it. If not, we follow a clear, logical progression to order the backup options. It's about keeping public notices local, visible and relevant, not buried in a paper that might be 75 miles away or more that locals don't even read. There's no new programs, no new spending, no controversy, just making sure that when the government says public notice, the public can actually notice what's being published. There's no fiscal note, no petition clause, unanimous support in the Senate, and the committee has the support of local governments and the Press Association. Rep. Lukens and I are pleased to bring the bill.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 61 updates an outdated technical requirement so that local governments can continue publishing legal notices in papers that actually reach their communities without weakening any transparency protections, and we ask for your yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 61? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 61. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 61 passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1123.
House Bill 1123 by Representatives Stewart K. and Mabry, also Senators Amabile and Weissman, concerning measures to prevent sexual abuse in jails.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1123 and the committee report.
Judiciary and Appropriations Committee
To
report.
the committee reports. I move the committee reports.
Awesome. Rep. Mabry, to the Appropriations Committee report.
In the Appropriations Committee, we appropriated some money. Actually, not really. We moved some money around.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye. All those in opposition, no. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted.
Or is this an amendment?
To the
Okay, yeah.
Judiciary Committee report. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We made a lot of changes in the Judiciary Committee, but our amendments today actually augment a lot of those changes. And so before we really get into what we did in the Judiciary Committee, let's run our amendments. I move L11 and ask for it to be properly displayed.
L11 has been displayed. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So L11 moves where we are putting the new strip search standards from Title 16 out of criminal procedure. So existing standards remain the same for all arrests. L12, which we will run, has the new language that we're putting in Title 17. This amendment also says county jails must have systems that electronically track, log all access to video footage. And footage may be stored. This was a contentious issue in the committee. We're allowing footage to be stored on the cloud as long as it's not being remotely viewed by personnel without permission from the sheriff and documentation as to why. And we ask for an aye vote on L11.
Is there any further discussion to L11? Representative Bottoms.
This is a good amendment. I like this amendment. I think this is a good starting point to try to fix some things within this bill, but I usually come up here and complain, so I want to say something positive. This is a good amendment.
Is there any further discussion to L11? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L11. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. L11 is adopted to the Judiciary Committee report. Representative Mabry, is there another amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L12 to the committee report and ask that it be properly displayed. L12 is a multi-page.
Oh, it's to the bill?
Oh, is L12 to the bill?
So L14.
Oh, okay. No, and L14 is to L12, which
Oh,
is to the
okay.
bill. Okay. We ask for an aye vote on the committee report. I withdraw L12.
L12 has been withdrawn. To the Judiciary Committee report. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The Judiciary Committee report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is truly an honor to serve with you.
Well, folks, I actually really wish I weren't up here talking to you about this. This bill is very personal. It comes from my district, where a jail commander abused his privilege of power, and we've identified 117 victims of this abuse. And so moving forward, we'd like to offer safeguards to protect folks in jail awaiting trial, to make sure that they aren't violated in the same way that these 117 women were. It's been a very heavy policy. We've had a lot of great stakeholder engagement with law enforcement, with victim advocacy groups, and with judiciary members. So a big thank you to my co-prime and to House Judiciary for asking hard questions. I really hope you can support this bill and we can do better for our neighbors.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I also would like to thank my co-prime for asking me to be on this bill. This is a really important issue, and the stories that motivated it came out of southwestern Colorado, where she represents. This bill is about preventing sexual abuse in Colorado jails to protect the dignity and bodily autonomy of people who are in custody. Recent reporting from Denver 7 exposed a deeply disturbing allegation coming out of a Colorado jail. According to the reporting, a jail commander allegedly accessed recordings of strip searches, recordings showing incarcerated people naked, and used them for his own sexual gratification. Let's think about that for a moment. People who are in custody, people who have no ability to leave, no ability to protect their privacy, were recorded in one of the most vulnerable moments imaginable, and those recordings were allegedly used not for security or for evidence, but for sexual exploitation. Strip searches are one of the most intrusive powers that the government has. They involve forcing a person to expose themselves for inspection. That power must come with the highest possible safeguards. But as this incident illustrates, the protections we have today simply aren't enough. And this isn't an isolated concern. We heard from many victims in committee. Sexual violence and violations of bodily autonomy in jail remain a serious problem nationwide and here in Colorado. Research shows that sexual victimization in incarcerated settings remains alarmingly common. One national study found that within 6 months of incarceration, nearly 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men experienced sexual victimization, with transgender incarcerated people facing even higher risks. Now, I gotta be perfectly candid about how some of these conversations have gone in light of one of the things that I said. I said that power must come with some of the highest possible safeguards. That's not what's going to be in this bill because of the stakeholder process. We initially considered implementing a probable cause standard in this bill. And through the stakeholder process, we have brought that down to a reasonable belief standard that is partnered with documentation by 2 separate officers as to why a strip search is necessary. Our amendments today are going to address a lot of the concerns we heard in committee from members on the other side of the aisle who wanted to support us but had some concerns about intake. One of our amendments explicitly addresses the intake piece, and with that, I move L12 to House Bill 1123.
L12 has been moved and displayed. It is a multi-page amendment. It was received on March 26, 2026 at 3:06 p.m. To the amendment, Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So L12 complements L11, and L11 we stripped out the language we had initially in the bill that was in Title 16, and that was regarding strip searches in jails. We've now placed that in Title 17, providing new parameters on here. This has that change that I mentioned, and I'll just highlight, and then we'll just sort of bullet point the rest of this. But the local detention facility can conduct a strip search only if A, they're conducting it on intake of an arrested person, and conducting a strip search upon intake is the facility's policy, and then or that language that I said before, 2 personnel have made independent determinations and reason to believe that an inmate is concealing weapon-controlled substance on the inmate's person. I will say I do think that reasonable belief standard is too low, but we got there in stakeholdering the bill. This is a long amendment, so it also covers that each facility will submit an annual report of their strip search numbers, reasons to the Jail Standards Advisory Committee under the Department of Public Safety and to the Attorney General's office. Overhead cameras with audio and video are preferred to record strip searches and instructs officers not to activate their body cam during a strip search unless there is no overhead recording, and ensures that wrongdoing will not be presumed if an officer turns their body camera off to comply with this, and adds unlawful sexual conduct and invasion of privacy for sexual gratification against a person in custody to the list of offenses that can cause an officer's post-certification to be revoked. And we do have an amendment to the amendment, and I, Madam Chair, I move L14 to L12.
Thank you, Rep. Mabry. L14 has been moved to L12, to the amendment, L14.
L14 just is a technical amendment on the what we are talking about when we're talking about an overhead camera, and it says that should be included are audio and video if they're going to turn off their body cams and use an overhead camera. And we urge an aye vote on L14.
Is there any further discussion to amendment L14? L14. Is there any further discussion to amendment L14? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of amendment L14 to L12. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The L14 to L12 is adopted. To L12. Is there any further discussion on L12, the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L12 to House Bill 1123. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. To the bill, House Bill 1123. Is there any further discussion? Representative Fresnel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to extend thanks to the bill sponsors for working with us. From what the bill originally was to what it is now, I just wanted to extend gratitude. It has significantly changed, and I appreciate them working across the aisle and taking into consideration some of the concerns that I had, as well as my local sheriff and some of the others. So I will gladly give credit where it's due, and so I just wanted to give thanks.
Is there any further discussion? Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. So, someone unable to not violate the right of others might require isolation from society. But that doesn't mean that they lose all their other rights. And I think it's incumbent on us to protect those rights, even if they're incarcerated, maybe especially because they can't. In a very vulnerable status, they can't do that themselves. And I know that the strip searches have been used for the Secretary of State's political prisoner, Tino Peters, multiple strip searches for the purpose of humiliation. So they're often used for other than actual law enforcement means. And although she was a first-time offender with a fraction of the offenses of the Secretary of State, she's still subject and has been in jail for nearly 2 years.
Rep. DeGraff.
So,
will you please move your amendment? Thank you.
Well, I'm just speaking of the abuses of the strip search that has been used on the Secretary of State's political prisoner. So I move L017 to House Bill 1123 and ask that it be displayed.
Thank you, Rep. DeGraff. L17 has been moved and properly displayed. Please do the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this amendment, it just allows some flexibility for smaller jails. If you go up, it just talks about the different jails, and this just says a local detention facility with an average daily population of 250 persons or fewer may satisfy the requirement to designate a PREA coordinator as required in this section through a shared region coordinator agreement approved by the sheriff or the operating entities that facilitate a single PRA coordinator for the participators, the participating facilities. So for small facilities, it just allows us to decrease the manpower a little bit, take the edge off there. Looks like Looks like the FTE is near zero, just the recurring theme, but this will allow us to reduce the manpower a little bit more, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to ask for a no vote for a couple of reasons. One, 250 people in a jail is not a small jail. And two, the PREA coordinator is not somebody who needs to be newly hired. Typically, this person already has administrative duties and is already working at the jail. And so it is not necessary to delegate this work to a regional coordinator. So we ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion to L17? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L17. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no? No. The amendment is lost. To the bill, Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you.
Yeah, I wanted to come down and say, I appreciate the good work of the sponsors in bringing the Yellowback amendment that really addresses a lot of the concerns we were raising in committee. One thing that we really wanted to be able to parse out, and I believe the amendment does so, is really the difference between when you're in a custodial environment or a non-custodial environment in terms of reasonable suspicion. Certainly there is a constitutional requirement to keep the jailhouse safe of weapons and drugs, and the ability to do a strip search to ensure that nothing comes into the detention center that would actually put other detainees in harm's way is important, and that they also have civil rights and civil liberties as well that we need to be protecting, and not be pitting one detainee against another detainee by what could possibly come into the jail setting. So I see the amendment as definitely being able to parse that together, and just want to say I appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1123? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of House Bill 1123 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1123 as amended is passed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. Seeing none, seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Shebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report as under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1123 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bills 9 is amended, 21 is amended, 26, 54, 61, 126 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered, revised, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Joseph. Members, you have heard the motion that we adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote? Representative Weinberg, you are on mute.
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Espinoza? Hamrick, Morrow, A. Valdez excused. There we go. Please close the machine. With 37 aye, 21 no, and 7 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Any additional announcements or introductions? Seeing none, Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till Wednesday, April 1st, 2026.
Seeing no objections, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
The House will stand in recess until later today.